Error handling is a crucial aspect of programming, allowing developers to manage and respond to exceptions that occur during program execution. This lecture will cover the fundamentals of exceptions and errors and how to use try, except, else, and finally blocks to handle these issues effectively. What is exceptions? Exceptions are events that occur during the execution of a program that disrupt the normal flow of instructions. They are typically errors that can be handled to prevent the program from crashing. And here are the types of exceptions. Number one is syntax error. This occurs when the code is not written correctly. Number two is name error. This occurs when a variable is not found in the local or global scope. And the next one is type error. Type error occurs when an operation is performed on an inappropriate type. And we have the index error, which occurs when trying to access elements outside the range of a list or other indexable collection. Then we have the value error. The value error occurs when a function receives an argument of the correct type but an inappropriate value. And we also have the key error. The key error occurs when trying to access a dictionary with a key that does not exist. Let's now check out the errors one after the other. The first one is the syntax error. This is an example of a syntax error. If you observe, the strings is supposed to have two quotes, an opening quote and a close quote. As you can see, there is no close quote here, and the parenthesis is not closed. So if I run this, it is going to return a syntax error. You can see what we have here, syntax error, unterminated string literal detected at line 2, which we have here. So this is an example of a syntax error. Remember, syntax error occurs when the code is not written correctly. In this case, that is what we have here. This code is not written correctly. Let's go to the next one, which is name error. Let me make this a comment so it does not execute. Okay, so this is name error, and this is an example of name error. If I run this code, we are going to see the output. You can see name error. Name is not defined. We are telling Python to print name, and the name there is not defined as a variable. So you will get a name error. And remember, name error occurs when a variable is not found in the local or global scope. The next one we have here is the type error. So let's run this one and see what it's going to give to us. Alright, we have the type error here. Can only concatenate strings to strings and not integer. If you observe, we want to add these two numbers, and one is a string while the other one is an integer. So it will return a type error. And you can see the reason. You can see the reason here. Can only concatenate strings to string and not integer to string. That is why it returns a type error. A type error occurs when an operation is performed in an inappropriate type. So these two cannot go together. The next one we have here is the index error. And this is an example of an index error. If I run this code, we are going to see the outcome. And here we have it. Index error, list index out of range. What is out of range? It is 5. We created a list which is 1 to 3, and we told Python to print 5. And 5 is not an element in the list. That is why it says list index out of range. So this is an example of an index error. The next one we have is the value error. If I run this, we are going to see the outcome. Here we have it, invalid literal for integer with base 10 xyz. We said this is an integer, meanwhile inside the bracket we have a string, so this will give us the value error. And when does this occur normally? The value error occurs when a function receives an argument of the correct type but an inappropriate value. And lastly, we have the key error. Here we created a dictionary and we want to print age. Is this possible? Let's see for ourselves. You can see the return key error age. Why? Because age is not in the dictionary. We only have name, John. We did not assign any value to age, and we want to print age, so you can get the key error. The key error occurs when trying to access a dictionary with a key that does not exist. I'm very sure I've explained these errors to your understanding, and you have seen live examples of when these errors normally occur when writing your code. Now we have the errors and the exception blocks. The first one is the try block. The try block lets you test a block of code for errors. And number two, we have the except block. The except block lets you undo the error. And the next one is the else block. The else block lets you execute code when there is no error. And the fourth one is the finally block. The finally block lets you execute code regardless of the result of the try and except blocks. Let's check out an example where we used all these blocks. Now, I want to write a program. The program will prompt users for a number. If the input is valid and can be converted to an integer, it prints the number and indicates no exceptions occurred. If the input is invalid, for example, a value error is raised, it prints a message indicating the input is not valid. Regardless of the outcome, it prints a final message indicating the end of the execution. This structure ensures that the program can handle invalid input gracefully without crashing and provides clear feedback to the user. So let's create it. We will start with the try block. I am going to write a code that will prompt users to enter a number using the input function. So I will say number equal to integer. Then we open the brackets. I will write the input function. Then I will say enter a number. And when users enter that number, I want to print it. So I will say print. Then I will use the F string. I want it to display the number you entered is. Then I want to print the number the user entered into the code. So here, the try block contains code that might raise an exception. It attempts to convert the input into an integer using the int function. If the conversion is successful, it prints the entered number. The next code is the except block. The except block helps you handle errors. So we'll write except. If an error occurs, what is then going to happen? And what type of error? It is the value error. So I will say the value error. And what is the value error again? The value error, or why the value error? The value error occurs when the function receives an argument of the correct type but an inappropriate value. So this user might enter a wrong value. And when this happens, I want it to print that is not a valid number. Let me explain this code. The except block handles specific exceptions raised in the try block. So if a value error occurs, like for example the user enters a string that cannot be converted to an integer, the block executes. It prints a message indicating that the input is not a valid number. I can start to run this code like this so that we can see what I am trying to say. Okay, so now it is asking us enter a number. So let me enter any number, let's say 24. Press the enter key. The number you enter is 24. You can see it now. There is no error because what was expected was an integer. Now let me run it again and let me enter a string or something else. Okay, now enter a number. Let me say love. Press the enter key. You can see that is not a valid number, which is the value error that we stated here. So if a user enters a string that cannot be converted to an integer, the block is going to execute and it will print a message indicating that the input is not a valid number. So what the code is expected from the user is an integer, and if it cannot convert whatsoever value that is entered into an integer, it will print that is not a valid number. Okay, so let's continue. Now, if no error occur, what should be the output? I want to say else, if no value occur, then print no exceptions occurred. Now this is what I want to be printed if no error occur. I don't just want it to end like that. If there is no error it should print no exceptions occurred. And as you may already know from one of the previous lessons, the else block executes if no exceptions are raised in the try block. If the input is successfully converted to an integer and no exception occurs, this block executes. It prints a message indicating that no exceptions occurred. And lastly, finally, let's use the finally block. Finally, print execution finish. So this is what I want. The finally block always execute regardless of whether an exception occurred or not. This block executes after the try, except, and else blocks. It prints a message indicating that the execution of the try block and its associated blocks has finished. So I have been able to use the try, except, else, and finally block in this program. Let me run it so we can see everything at once. Okay, it prompts me to enter a number. Let me say 50. Press the enter key. The number you entered is 50. No exceptions occurred. Execution finished. You can see what we have there. So there is no error. I want to run it again. This time, let me enter 2.09 and see what it's going to return. Press the enter key. That is not a valid number. Execution finished. You can see why it is showing me not a valid number, because 2.09 is not an integer, it's not a string, but it is a float. It triggers an error, then the value error printed, that is not a valid number. And remember, our finally block always executes whether an exception occurred or not. That's why we have the execution finished. So that was just one of the lectures in my Python programming for beginner course. If you want to know more about this course, here is the back end. This course will teach you Python programming in 7 days. So for day 1, you'll be introduced to Python and Python installation. You will learn what is Python and why you should learn Python. You will also learn how to install and set up your IDE, because there is no way you can start coding Python without an IDE. For day 2, you will learn about basic syntax and data types. You will learn about Python syntax and indentation. You will also learn about basic input and output. And guess what? Every day comes with an exercise. If you look at this place right here, you will see an exercise. This is exercise for day 2. So you are not just watching videos, you are also getting your hands dirty by doing exercises. So every day comes with an exercise. This is the exercise for day 2. You can see it here. While day 3, you will learn about control structures. Under control structures, you will learn about conditional statements like if, elif, and else. And you also learn loops. You will learn the for loop and the while loop. And as usual, it also comes with an assignment. You can see it here. This is an exercise for day 3. Day 4, I covered Python functions, defining and calling functions, and scope of variables. And you will also get to do an assignment, which is day 4 exercise. You can see that every day you will get to do an exercise. Day 5, you will learn about data structures, which include lists and tuples. You will learn how to create lists, how to index lists, how to slice lists, append, remove, and every other thing you need. For tuples, you will learn how to create, how to index, and how to slice, and many other things. There's also an assignment there. Then for day 6, I talked about dictionaries and sets. Day 7, you will learn about file handling, how to read files with Python, and how to write into files with Python. And not just that, I also added a bonus, which is error handling and exceptions. And I also have more bonus coming. Yes, I'm also updating this course to make it really authentic and strong for every beginners. So if you would like to enroll in this course, the link is in the description box. Just go there, click the link, and you will get to enroll in this course. The fee is just $3.99. Yes, just $3.99. And make it very cheap so that you will not have any excuse why you should not begin your journey in learning Python programming to become either a software developer or a website developer. So if you are new to Python and you would like to develop that Python skill, go click the link in the description box and enroll in the course right now. The good thing is this: you have me as your mentor, so you can always come to me to ask questions whenever you feel confused, and I will always be glad to give you answers to your questions. Okay? Till we meet again, see you in my next video.